evening, everyone, and welcome to Medieval Mental Health with the creative Contessa and Johanna Dinsdale. We are here today we're going to be
Welcome.
discussing all kinds of interesting topics about mental health in the Middle Ages. And I'm just going to tell you right from the get-go, it's not going to be what you expect it to be, because I
Oh,
don't know if you encountered this in your research and your reading, but there's a lot of bad modern myths about mental health in the Middle Ages that
that's what
just
I
aren't.
was finding too. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, for those of you who don't know, I am a qualifying psychotherapist in Canada, Ontario, and I actually reached out to the creative Contessa because I absolutely love her content. I love watching it. It is so relaxing. I really do find it kind of therapeutic, honestly, to just learn about the medieval times, especially when you're doing your cooking episodes. Those are my favorite. So, guys, if you're tuning in for my side of things, please subscribe to her. She is incredible.
Yeah. So, when you reached out to me, and I thought, okay, this will be a good opportunity for me to expand my knowledge, because I peripherally touched on the topic of mental health in the Middle Ages as it impacted other aspects of daily life in that era. So I started really digging in, and the first thing that when you first start looking, especially if you look in old history books or older books written by historians, you find, you know, medicine in the Middle Ages was benighted and completely backwards and filled with superstition, and all any mental health issue was just attributed to being demonic possession, and patients were violently exorcised, and many thousands upon thousands of people died at the hands of inept priests or whatever. I don't know. Did you encounter that kind of thing when you were
Yeah,
reading through?
absolutely. So I kind of figured out that I did kind of have a bias about what mental health would look like in
Hmm.
medieval times because I actually lived in England for a bit, and my favorite, like as a kid, and my favorite topic was specifically the history, right? Learning about medieval times.
Right.
And I think I did have a little bit of a bias of like, it's probably going to be super minimal, if nothing. But
Right.
they did have treatments specific to the time.
Yeah.
And I actually came up with a few myths and truths, and I thought maybe it would be kind of fun to play a game. Would you be down for that?
Oh, absolutely. Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, let's play then. Guys, let's see here. Let me just pull it up. Okay. Let's start with this one. To cure a broken heart, medieval physicians prescribed drinking pulverized precious gems like pearls or emeralds.
So I'm going to say that's likely true, because the drinking of pulverized precious stones was prescribed for a great number of maladies.
You are
Uh,
correct.
yeah, yeah. No, sorry. Lorenzo de Medici, the de facto but not official Prince of Florence, when he was basically dying slowly, and I don't think anyone has diagnosed what actually killed him. But he was only in his 40s, so he was a young man. And they were getting so desperate to save him that in the last like 2 years of his life, he consumed millions of dollars of pulverized gems.
Wow.
To yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's
So
incredible. You don't really
yeah.
think of it, but I wonder how that would actually affect your gut health. I can't imagine it being too good, huh?
I mean, but people are taking gold now, so, and
That is
colloidal silver.
true.
So
Oh, yeah.
I don't. I actually did wonder that myself, and I don't think we should definitely be doing experiments with it in in vivo.
We're medieval time physicians. We're not the professionals here.
But yeah, I did wonder, especially in the case of pearls, that's just calcium, right? So
Yeah,
not that's not so bad.
not the
That
worst,
might that
absolutely.
that
What
might
was the
that might
grittiness? That was
actually
my concern.
the pearls, though, thinking about it, so if you take the wrong kind of calcium, especially if you take shell-based calcium, it actually clogs up your arteries. So
Oh, I
a lot
didn't
of
know that.
people don't know that. So it actually will clog up your vascular system. So that might not have actually helped. You really want to be taking plant-based calcium, like that is the result that from algae and that kind of thing. It's a
Oh
different
my
kind of
gosh.
yeah, it's a different kind of calcium. I mean,
You're gonna
the
crush
calcium
this. truth or dare, like truth or myth. I feel like you're gonna know all of them.
I don't know. So I mean, I really have to be perfectly honest. Medieval medicine is not my strong suit. It is so, like you were saying, one of the myths is that medieval medicine was benighted, simple folk remedies, and nothing could be further from the truth. It was highly scientific, but the science on which it was based was the four humors. We understand now
Yes.
that that's an incorrect understanding, but that doesn't make it simple. It was super complex. You know,
Mhm.
you talk about charts on charts on charts of overlapping cold, wet, humid, moist, dry in the second and third and fourth degree. This was serious science. It just was not a correct understanding of the fundamentals of
I know, but
biology.
they tried, and I
They
mean, I feel
tried.
like they didn't get too close, but I feel like they were on the right track, you know?
Right. And so,
I did do a
sometimes,
little bit of research on the humors as well. Do you wanna do a little bit of, explanation for the audience?
oh, yeah. So the four humors are actually an ancient system of medical belief that spans Eurasia, and probably into Africa as well, especially the parts that were Muslims, because this was part of Islamic medicine as well in the Middle Ages. So the
Oh,
four humors is this underlying fundamental theory of human biology, as understanding it as consisting of four humors, four liquids that basically make up your entire constitution. And as long as those are in balance, then you're fine. But if they become out of balance, that's the cause of disease. Basically, is that there's a humoral imbalance. So that's the basic underlying concept. And the humors are not, they're not pleasant. It's a blood, black bile, yellow bile, and phlegm
wow, good for you knowing this off the top of
are
your head. That's
are
right.
the are
My
the
research kind of I was interested in like the mental health aspect of it, right? And I hear that black bile was kind of tied to depression,
it was
lethargy,
melancholy.
paranoia. That's
Yep,
right. And it's so
yep,
funny. Like it's interesting how each of them kind of do coincide with modern day psychotherapy, right? Like the next one, yellow bile, is anger, mania, violent outbursts. And it kind of
yep.
reminds me of like how the DSM-5, you know, like the way that we categorize mental health also did the same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the idea of categorizing. I mean, medieval and ancient people, like starting in the ancient times, humans like categorizing.
Mhm. They
We
really
we we love to categorize things. We like to give an order to things. We like to bring order to chaos. And yeah, medieval health manuals are lengthy and in depth and categorize disease, illnesses, humoral imbalances in exactly the same way as the DSM does. It's it's not it in and of itself. It's not a revolutionary document because it just picks up where its medieval forebears left off. It just approaches, you know, mental health from a different understanding of human biology.
Hey, we all got to start somewhere, right? And I'm just glad we
Right.
were born in an era where, you know, we do have like 1,000 years plus research done.
Yep.
So exactly, little stepping stones. And it's really fun to go back in time and see what exactly the differences are and like the mistakes were made and where
Yep.
they actually got things right.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, you know,
Yeah.
it's sometimes, often they did, like at the practical level, at the pragmatic level, medieval health, at the fundamentals, not of biology so much, but of health practices, they got it right. Wash your hands, wash your feet, brush your teeth, you know, clean, wear clean clothes, exercise, eat properly, don't drink too much alcohol, get good sleep. All the health manuals from the Middle Ages all say that, all of them without exception. So
Right.
they understood the basics of a happy, healthy life. It's just when you get into disorder that things start getting a little hinky.
That's right. I actually really love this specific one that I learned about. One of the specific treatments for feeling unbalanced with the humors was to listen to a bird sing for 30 minutes straight.
Yeah,
And as
yeah,
somebody who uses kind of mindfulness techniques, that is exactly what it would be, right? It's like to be in the present moment, to
yep,
relax, to go out into nature
yep.
and to just breathe, right? To be in that present moment. So yeah, it's basically soundscape therapy, medieval edition.
Yeah, yeah. So it's, you know, I'll maybe get into this in more depth later, but one of the primary treatments for madness in the Middle Ages for people, especially who couldn't afford sophisticated physician care, was to go to the shrine of a saint who was reputed to heal mental illness. And if you think about it, going to a shrine is a kind of vacation. It's a vacation from life, right? You're going away from this place where your stressors are, where the pressures are, where you have responsibilities, and you're going to a place where you have no responsibilities. Your only responsibility there is to heal yourself, right? Is to interact with the saint and be cured. You're in a new place. You're in a new environment. It's probably out in the countryside. It's probably peaceful and beautiful. There's going to be a church where there'll be lovely music from mass being sung on a regular basis. You're going to be cared for by other people in many cases, as we'll find out. So it's like, that's
so incredible.
Right. And so this is, in many cases, these people are reported as having been cured. And my theory is, of course they were. Of course they were. They did the most important thing when you have a mental health issue that isn't seriously hard neurowired. You change your environment.
Yeah, and take a little, what do you call it? A mental health break, retreat,
right?
And that's exactly what it was.
Exactly
I did
what
see
it was.
a specific example of that. It's so funny that you bring that up. It was King Henry VI.
Yeah.
He was having issues with overwhelmness of his job. Basically, very stressful. There was like wars happening and stuff. So he finally just snapped a little bit and was like really, really, depressed. So what did they do? They had these specific, exactly how you described. Again, like he was a king, so I feel like he got more treatment close to, the modern day folk of the time. But like they really tried to take a lot off of his plate. They used
his queen did everything for him. His queen did everything for him. Yeah, Henry VI, he went catatonic for a year.
Yeah,
he didn't speak.
Got better.
Yeah, he got better. He did. He got better. Henry VI is Shakespeare wrote a tragedy about him for a reason. And it's because he was never meant to be a king. Like he had the temperament of a monk. Like that's what he wanted.
He sounds like a real nice guy or chill,
That's all he wanted. He wanted to go. He was very pious. He just wanted to go live in a monastery, pray, meditate, listen to the birds sing, but instead he's king of a tumultuous England in the midst of a civil war between, rival factions of the royal family. And, meanwhile, there's 100 Years' War happening in France, and his father is Henry V, the warrior king par excellence, right? The king who actually finally brings true the idea of the King of England being the King of England and the King of France. And, he's a child when his father dies of dysentery, by the way.
I did not know that.
Henry V dies the death that most medieval knights die, not glorious on the battlefield, but pooping themselves to death in a tent somewhere. So, his father dies when he's a little boy. And his mother basically abandons him. She has this morganatic marriage to Owen Tudor, right? She has this love affair with this man in her household who's like minor gentry at best. And she's a princess of France. So she ends up basically having to give up her son. When he's like 7, she leaves him. And so
this guy was struggling. Like, if
you look
at
kidding.
The aspect, right? Like, this poor guy did not have the easiest upbringing, especially.
He didn't.
Think anybody would be that's a lot of responsibility and power, and I don't know.
It is, and he's and the worst part is he's the grandson of Charles VI, who was mad, like violently, insanely mad, King of France. So Charles VI was schizophrenic at best, but like psychotically so. He would have episodes where he would, for example, his delusions were powerful. He thought he was made of glass, and that if he walked the littlest bit not carefully, he would shatter into 1,000 pieces. Like he had episodes of delusions like that. And then he had psychotic breaks where he would kill 3 or 4 of his men at arms. Like just kill them, just slaughter them, just violent murderous rage. So Henry VI is the grandson of Charles VI. And so there is a high likelihood.
So many layers. I'd love to work with this guy.
Yeah, right. I mean,
yeah. We could definitely work through some of that. But
And I
did
mean,
you did say
Charles,
it got better, right? Like, what did you think of hearing about that? That the treatment of kind of that gentle
yeah,
care.
he eventually did get better, but he had multiple catatonic episodes. Like he would
Yeah.
come and he would go, and it was really rough. He was very clearly never meant to be a king.
Mhm.
But yeah, the fact that the treatments did
Do
eventually
something.
work, yeah,
Yeah.
it's and that seems to be the case in most of the cases when treatments uh when the treatment involves just letting them get a break.
Right,
It
exactly.
just
Exactly.
it really does seem to work.
Yeah, kind of tying
Okay.
that into our modern day society too, right? Like, man, sometimes we just need a break, and a lot of the times it, just doesn't happen for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've got a couple of questions here. So what happened when the people returned home? Which is a valid question. So honestly, look, we're lucky to have any records about non-nobility at all. We should just, first off, I would like you all to take a moment and be grateful that we know about these lives of these peasants via the miracles of the saints. See, did you encounter any saints miracles, Joanna, in your searching, in your reading?
A little bit. It's
Yeah.
kinda, like, tied to, mental health and the
Yep.
origins of it, right? Some people
Yeah.
thought there was spiritual sickness, which
Right.
was causing that, so there'd be, like, a lot of praying,
Right.
and whatnot, but yeah, let me know what you found out about that.
Yeah, so the one of the best ways, if you want to understand the lives of daily people, like the average person, not just the great and the good, then the records of saints' miracles are the best, and not the ones that are written like centuries later. I mean, there's an interview process when a saint is undergoing canonization, or when they're going through the canonization process. A candidate is going through this process. Hundreds of people are interviewed concerning the miracles that prospective saint may have performed, and people who are still alive, right? And so these are recorded carefully, and most of the people who go to these shrines are not they're not the great and the good, because the great and the good can afford physicians, right? The people
Mhm,
going to shrines and praying for cures are the peasants, are the laborers, are the poor, are the needy, are the
mhm,
beggars. And so they're the ones who are being interviewed. And so we can learn not only about the things, the issues, the health issues, mental or otherwise, that drove them to visit the shrine, we can learn about their daily lives in these things. So if you ever want to really have primary source understanding of the daily life of an average person, look up records of saints' miracles, specifically from the interview process. And I found a whole bunch of those concerning Henry VI, because Henry VI was considered locally within England a saint. So
oh, interesting.
people actually visited his shrine, and many of the people who visited his shrine were people suffering from mental health issues. So I have a whole bunch of cases that I collected of people visiting Henry VI shrine seeking a cure for their madness. You know, it's
And what
referred
does
to
the
as madness.
shrine entail? I didn't hear about the shrines.
Yeah, so a shrine is usually it's set up with the relics of the saint. So maybe their shirt or one of their bones or whatever. But it starts off usually as, you know, a little shrine, like an altar of, like I said, the lives of people who are not the great and the good. And the details are pretty interesting because they try to get as much detail as they can
I was
of
gonna
the
say, do you have
illness.
an interesting example of a miracle that
Oh
happened?
yeah. I took notes specifically so we could make sure I get the names right. Um, Let me see. Oh, is this the wrong notebook? Handsome, where's my notebook? I think I grabbed the wrong notebook.
That's
Okay.
okay. I do that
No,
all
no,
the
no.
time. Lots
So
floating
okay,
around.
yeah, I know. Like, I live in a household of notebooks. We have a problem. We have an issue with notebooks in this household. Could you please bring me my little notebook? Okay. So one of the cases, so I do remember some of them. So one of the cases is a case of PTSD, actually. This is
Ooh,
interesting.
interesting.
So, as you were saying, mental health seems to have been a common, like medieval people viewed it as either a disease of the body, like they did. They really did. They absolutely viewed it as a disease of the body. Apparently, Ryan thinks that kitties are a crucial part of mental health.
Oh, they absolutely are. Hello
They
there.
are, aren't they?
What's
What?
her name? What's her name?
That's nabi, which means butterfly in Korean. It's a
Beautiful.
very popular name for kitties here. She
That
is
is
pudgy though. She's not like a butterfly.
sweet. She's butterfly in spirit.
She is. She's a butterfly in spirit. Anyway, so this man was suffering from. He was attacked by three people, and this is in the record. This is absolutely in the record. He was attacked by three people, and I wanted to name his name because I think it's important when we have names that we actually name them. That these people don't just become. Oh yeah, William Baker. William Baker. He was attacked by three people, and afterwards he had a mental health break, but he started his expression of this breakdown was that he started like blaspheming and calling the virgin a whore, and
Wow.
he started calling on demons, right? And so, but the people said, the person recording it said, they're pretty certain that the attack is what led to the mental break. And then
You make
a
a
demon took
connection.
advantage, a demon took advantage of his weakened state to drive him over the edge. But they didn't
Oh,
actually think he was possessed. They just thought the demon had driven him into to complete madness. But
okay.
they,
That's interesting.
right? But they
Yeah.
acknowledged that it's the attack that was
That
the
caused
driving
it.
incident. Yeah. And
Wow.
he goes to the shrine of Henry VI and he's cured. He comes back a whole healthy man. And so the question was, what happens to these people afterwards? Well, unless we have they either they didn't have a relapse because they didn't come back, or they had a relapse and they didn't go back. Right? We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
we don't know.
Absolutely.
We don't know.
Well, it is interesting because spirituality, just kind of connecting it to modern day times too.
Right.
Spirituality can be very healing. There's full psychotherapy practices that run off of spiritual therapy where
Yeah.
people come in and they do feel like their souls are heavy and that, in order to fix it, they have to pray. And
Yep.
that's a completely valid way to kind of help or at least support some of the mental health practices, right? Because feelings of guilt and, shame, which oftentimes, if you're battling a bunch of nights and, killing people and stuff, I'm sure there is a lot of shame and guilt and stress around that.
Yeah.
So I can absolutely see why kind of going and praying about it and feeling like, whatever, again, like I don't know too much about that specific Catholic religion at the time, but feeling kind of redeemed or like forgiven can be a big game changer.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it makes sense in amongst people who are very pious that their expression of madness, of mental, of you know failing mental health would be expressed in religious terms, right? Would be expressed by blaspheming, by acting out against their faith. Like, that's just how they understood the world. you know
Yeah.
now people might curse politicians or baseball or sports stars or whatever, but in an era when most people were seriously faithful, not just lip service faithful, but seriously faithful. It makes sense that mental health would be expressed, or madness would be expressed in these very religious terms.
Yeah, the culture, right? Because if they truly believe that like a demon is doing this to them,
Yep.
then in their mind, the only reasonable cure for that would be to pray. And I
Yep.
mean, obviously, it probably wouldn't work all the time. It might alleviate some of the symptoms for a bit, but yeah, I can see why some people would consider that to be kind of a miracle. Did you have any other good examples from that?
Yeah.
Story or that book?
Henry the Sixth has a whole bunch of miracles. So, and this is almost all of them. The way the original episode is recorded, almost all of them approach it from the idea of it's a disease and or a spiritual issue, but almost none of them say it's just demonic infestation, right?
Yeah, it's often tied to the body. I noticed that too.
Right, it's often tied to the body. And I actually had this idea last night as I was talking with Ryan about my findings. They use the word infestation. It's not possession. That's a modern word. In medieval terms, in almost all the European languages that I was reading in, it's infestation. Infestation is disease language. That's the way we talk about diseases, right? Bacteria, viruses, we get infested with them, right? Mm-hmm. So what if demonic possession is it's some kind of almost, I don't know, genetic, subconscious, unconscious understanding of being infected by a virus or a bacteria.
Okay, that's amazing. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of, do you feel like there is any evidence, this is interesting, that I did have kind of a truth or dare about this, but did they figure that something around them would cause mental illness?
Well, not necessarily mental illness, but disease for certain. Miasma, the theory of miasma, right? So the theory of miasma, and this is really the precursor to germ theory. They understood cause and effect. So they understood, for example, when the Black Death came along, that if you were near patients who were sick, you were probably going to get sick also, right? They understood that. And so they thought to themselves, well, what is the thing that connects us? Well, the air connects us. Okay. So, but it can't just be all air, because if it were all air all the time, we'd all always be sick. So the logical next step was, well, it must be foul air. It must be air that smells bad. So the theory of miasma is that contagion, and they had the idea of contagion. It's just they didn't understand it from a microbiology perspective.
Right.
So they had this idea. They didn't have the tools to observe it. Like microscopes, not a thing yet. Telescopes are not even really a thing yet, right? So there was this beginning of this proto understanding. So that had already started as well.
Okay, interesting. So you feel like people don't think they can catch, I don't know, say like somebody was mad, and that's the language that they used in all this text.
Yeah, it is 100%. Yep, their own words. Their own words.
I did find kind of, they were superstitious but practical, right? Like they believed that this kind of, in their words, madness was internal or spiritual, but they, like you mentioned, like the germ theory. So they didn't think they could catch madness, is what I'm trying to get at.
It doesn't seem to be. And in fact, this leads us to quackery. That, just like now we have quacks, we have charlatans who are peddling cures that aren't cures, and in some cases may be destructive, right?
Absolutely.
Nothing new under the sun. So this is a medieval problem as well. So there was a belief, there was a folk belief. Physicians did not believe this, as far as I can tell. Official medical theory in the Middle Ages did not believe in this, but it was folk medicine, just like we have now, right? Just like but now we have WebMD to make things worse. But they believed, there was a belief that if you were mad, it's because you had a stone of madness in your brain.
Oh, a
Oh,
stone of
a
madness, huh?
stone of madness, a stone of madness. And
Really go for
so,
that, stone of madness.
yeah, so unfortunately, if you have a stone of madness, the most logical cure for that is to drill into your brain. And so there were quacks who would travel the countryside offering this cure for
Oh boy.
people. But it was most people understood that it was quackery and that such charlatans should be tarred and feathered and driven out of town. But of course, there's
Yeah,
always going to be someone desperate enough.
somebody, yeah. Nothing like a lobotomy to cure something,
Yeah,
right?
and
Oh
there's
boy.
actually a depiction of this in Hieronymus Bosch's um, depiction of hell in his Garden of Earthly Delight. There's a depiction of hell, right? You can actually there's actually a depiction of a quack drilling into the head of someone who was a known fool in the era. He was a fool, I think, in the Burgundian court. So it's actually a portrait of a
Oh
fool,
my
a
god.
professional fool, and Bosch has depicted him having the stone of folly removed from his brain. Now,
Wow.
I don't think I don't think it's biographical. I think it was just,
It's just a like
Bosch.
a fictional picture.
Right. It's Bosch depicting because Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights and his depictions of hell and purgatory are extremely metaphorical. They're extremely allegorical. There's so many layers of meaning and implication, and it's such a absolutely trippy set of panels that you can't interpret anything there as being what it seems. Right.
Right, right. Oh, interesting
So
stuff.
yeah,
So you're talking
the
about,
stone of folly. That there was
yeah,
a theory that you had a
stone of
stone of folly.
folly, the little stone of madness kind of made me think of these specific I just wrote some down, just like the funny treatments, like you said, like the folk treatments that they would give for you. And my favorite one was for insomnia. Apparently, they would say, take a small warm puppy, put it on your stomach, and let its heartbeat soothe you to sleep.
Yeah, which is actually, I mean, that is actually practical. um, th-
100%. I mean, I would want that treatment.
that's super practical. I'll do that. I will tell you though, in books of medicine, medieval medicine, there are some really disturbing applications for puppies that don't involve them being alive.
Oh
So,
no.
oh yeah, there's it.
Medieval times. Great.
especially,
Always up to something.
especially gynecological.
Mhm.
And those are sanguine, phlegmatic, choleric, and biliac, right? And so women have by nature a different temperament than men do. Like women are cold and wet, I think, and men are hot and dry. But don't hold me to
Interesting.
that. Like I'm not an
Yeah,
expert
no,
on the
it's
humors or
fine.
the temperaments.
Yeah.
But the point is that when you have a base temperament, then the way to rebalance your humors is different, right? So certain kinds of foods would be prescribed to women who were suffering from madness or melancholy based on the fact that they're a woman versus men, because the way you rebalance the
Different
humors is
treatment.
different. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Okay, so there
so there
is
are
a little
different
bit of
treatments.
difference.
There is not in terms of the shrine treatment is the same. Everyone goes to the shrine and gets the same treatment. You pray, you rest, you recover. That's men and women. That's all the same. But on the medical level, the treatments are absolutely different, which is why there's an entire series of books on women's health and treatments for women, the trotula, right? So
Wow.
yeah, there's written in the 12th century, supposedly at the medical school in Salerno, which was one of the most advanced schools of medicine in the pre-modern world, was Salerno in Sicily. And there were women physicians who were trained there and who actually traveled from all over Europe, got training in Salerno, and then went back and practiced,
That's amazing.
in other places in Europe. Yeah. So
I love
these books,
empowerment.
it's not as misogynist a time as people think it was.
Hmm.
I'm not saying it was all roses, but it isn't now either for women. So
That is true. Yeah, that's still a work in progress.
still a work in
You
progress.
mentioned the food things, talking about medieval doctors and food. Um, I also, in my research, found out that, they do believe that food is connected to your thoughts. So they would say avoid hot foods because it will literally boil your blood and cook your brain.
Yes, it will.
That's
Yeah,
what I
that's
heard. Is that true?
absolute, absolutely true. So depending on your temperament, depending on the diagnosis of in your humoral imbalance, there are absolutely foods you should avoid, and also the stages of life. There was a theory that depending on your stage in life, you would have a different temperament within your temperament. So if
Mm.
you're young, you need to eat certain things and avoid certain things, versus when you're older, you need to eat certain things and avoid certain things. Now, the question, Johanna, always is, how to what degree did the average person adhere to that? I will tell you, to what degree does the average person now adhere to the common
Hey,
guidelines
we're
for
not
good
that
diet?
different. We're not that different. Exactly. It's a recommendation. It's not a rule.
Rule. And how many of us eat that Snickers bar knowing full well what it's going to do to us, right? We do it anyway.
100%. Yep. When will we learn our lesson? Maybe
We
never.
won't. We won't.
That's the human condition. We like our
And
treats.
that actually brings it, the topic of the seven deadly sins is actually tied pretty closely to mental health in the Middle Ages, because one of the sins is a mental health sin, and a couple of the others might be considered that as well. So Acadia is often mistranslated as sloth,
Hmm.
but it's actually more of a psychological issue. It's one medieval writer described it, and this is such a beautiful description. Acadia is being stuck standing in the middle of a freezing cold stream with the water rushing all around you, and you can't bring yourself to move. Right?
Wow.
You're trapped. Like, how I was like, wow, I get goosebumps every time I think about that.
Mhm.
Like, how many of us have been in such a state of depression that that's what we feel like, that we know that we're in freezing cold water. We're going to, metaphorically, we're going to die if we don't leave this freezing cold body of water. But we
Mhm.
can't find the momentum, the motivation, the drive to just take a step forward or backwards or anything in any direction, right? That's Acadia. That's Acadia. It's it's this it's this level of depression where you just can't do anything. And it does eventually kind of get moralized by certain writers and certain thinkers in the Middle Ages as actually a moral failing. Like, you can just choose not to suffer from it.
Hey,
But
people still think that to this day, right?
right?
Yep.
I would, yes, yes.
We're
How
not so
often is
different.
depression moralized these days? Right?
Oh, well, fortunately, we're doing a little bit better. I feel like in the past, since I was born, I feel like it's a little less, but we're working our way up. Yeah,
We are. We are.
we
But
are.
there's a difference between the medical professionals and mental health professionals and their view,
Hmm.
and the official
Hmm.
view within that framework versus the average common view. Yeah,
That is
there's
true. That is true.
yeah. I will grant you that even I think at the common level modernly, we certainly have improved. We
Yeah.
moralize that kind of thing a lot less than, same thing with alcoholism, right? Alcoholism and drug
Mhm.
addiction in general used to be viewed as completely a moral failing. And
Really, in the medieval times, people who
uh
had a drinking issue.
no, so not in the so weird thing. alcoholism doesn't seem to be as much of an issue in medieval Europe.
It was kind
It
of
seems
normalized. And I feel like, to be
no, but it
fair, I
wasn't.
did live in England. People drink a lot more in England than they do in Canada.
So
And it's
yeah,
just normal.
right. So there's a difference between social drinking and like my grandfather was severely alcoholic, but he was
Yeah.
high functioning. And that was PTSD from World War II. That was total self medication.
Mm,
But what I mean by alcoholism, I don't mean just drinking. I mean like being dependent on the substance, and
yeah.
that actually rises. That comes about with distillation, which creates alcohol that is much more concentrated. And that they don't start
Watery.
drinking distilled alcohol until really the 16th century, and it doesn't get really big until the 17th and 18th century. And then you combine that with industrialization and the concentration of populations in the urban centers and the rise of poverty, and it just becomes a self-medicating situation, basically. You can get a shot
Yeah.
of gin for not very much money and it makes you numb, right?
Yeah.
So,
Okay, sorry. I have a question here.
yeah,
Hi, David, is wondering,
yeah,
what was the average lifespan back then?
that's a good question. So, again, do you have do you have an idea? Like, what would your instinct? What would it be if you were to give a number?
Oh man.
There's no wrong answers here. Literally, no wrong answers.
I think 40.
Okay, fine, great. Okay, so, and it might be if you leave in infant mortality in those numbers, right?
Okay.
So
Yes.
infant mortality and child mortality was so high in the Middle Ages that if you include those numbers into your average lifespan figures, suddenly the average lifespan gets really low. But if you control for that and only count the people who successfully make it to 18, basically, who make it to adulthood, right, who get past that really dangerous phase, the average age 60s is normal for
No,
people to get in their 60s. Yeah. We have lots
always
of people who live into their 70s, people, especially kings and queens, or kings not so much, queens who live into their 80s.
be fighting too much.
They're dying of diarrhea in the battlefield.
The barracks. Oh dear.
Yeah. So it's actually not that different from the modern world, depending on which country you're talking about, right? And in the U.S., our average age is dropping, as far as I understand it. So that's
really
a problem.
surprising. Yeah, that was like David guessed 20s or 40s.
Yeah. And of course, you also have to control, like,
sorry, somebody says you tell me I have a chance of survival back then. I guess he's over 40.
Elite bloodlines. I'm not including kings and queens in average lifespans. Besides which, including kings and queens in the average lifespan wouldn't impact the numbers almost at all, because there are so few. If you understand how averages work. Right. Yeah. I'm not talking about median. We're talking about average, right? So kings and queens, there's not many kings and queens relative to the rest of the population. So
textbooks are lying to me. No, it's good. No, I think you're right. I feel like where I saw that number did not take into consideration that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the other thing it doesn't take into consideration is, like, okay, are you going to include the Black Death in there? Because that's a kind of,
maybe.
It's a very like, that's a unique episode, right?
Exactly.
So, right, that's not normal. It's not normal for 60% of the population to die in a couple of years. That's not standard.
I had a question about how much mental illness do you think back then? Because I didn't really find anything. And obviously this would be hypothetical, but in your opinion, what do you think the prominence of mental health would be back then?
Meaning, like, you mean like concern for, like, how much did people care about it, or how healthy were people?
Yeah, how healthy were people, like, in general?
So there's going to be some people who are going to hate me for saying this, but based on my readings, and I've read,
You're the expert.
stories and chronicles. I'm not an expert, but I've read chronicles, and I mean, I have imposter syndrome. So anyway,
Oh,
I
don't
mean,
worry, I can treat you for that.
I've read through chronicles, primary, these miracles of the saints. Like I've read thousands of pages of primary sources about life in the Middle Ages by people who were living in that time. And I've read criminal cases, I've read coroner's reports, so I've read the whole spectrum, not just the good stuff, like the negative stuff as well. But my general impression that is that life was actually a lot less stressful.
Oh, we're back. I can't hear you though.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We're good.
The gremlin, the gremlin did what the gremlin did. Okay. So,
Right.
I have a gremlin, everyone. I've got a gremlin. It lives with me. It follows me all over the world and interferes with my streaming abilities. Anyway, so on several metrics, life was just a lot less stressful for everyone. Work-life balance was much better, and this is going to piss off a lot of people, but here it is. Work-life balance was a lot better for most people in medieval Europe, depending on when and where you were, right? Europe is not a monolith. The 1,000 years of the Middle Ages is not monolithic either, so your mileage is going to vary. But especially once Christianity had become one of the primary systems of faith in the continent, medieval Christianity came with 180 holy days a year.
Wow.
And those holy days, that is the origin of the word holiday. And so on those days, most people didn't work. In fact, there's I forget who it was, in the 14th century, there's a landowner who complains that there are too many holy days and that his peasants aren't actually working enough.
Tell ya. Snail slime to treat depression as an antidepressant. Hey, Contessa,
Okay.
are you back?
Maybe. Hold on. Let me. I
No
hate
worries.
technology.
I'll share my snail facts while you get that sorted. They used to put snail slime on your head for headaches and mental fatigue caused by studying too much. One popular remedy involved crushing up snails, mixing them with oil, rubbing the slime all over your forehead to cool down your thoughts. I also found out a really cool fact that back then they thought you could read too much and that could hurt your brain. So don't read too much, guys. Keep it reasonable.
Thankfully, can you hear me? Can you at least hear me? Okay. Thankfully, it was not possible for many people in the Middle Ages to read too much because books were crazy expensive. So that was the problem of the wealthy.
Their brain.
But one big issue that they did have, are we streaming horizontally or vertically? We should be streaming vertically, but it seems to think.
Yeah, I think it's horizontally.
Oh, great. Okay, well, that wasn't supposed to be. Okay.
Okay.
That would explain the relatively low viewership. Okay.
Yeah, it's crazy how that happens. How it makes such a difference.
Yeah, because the vertical stream has its own push, and the horizontal there is no horizontal stream. We should not have been streaming horizontally. I don't know why it did that. Okay, that's interesting.
Let's see.
Oh, Ryan
Somebody
says Ryan says we're vertical. Okay, maybe you're horizontal then, and I'm
maybe
vertical.
is double. Sometimes they do it
Okay.
twice, you know?
Yeah, maybe they're doing a dual stream. Okay,
Yeah.
snail. Yeah, so books were the purview of the very wealthy. Although there was an acknowledgement that you shouldn't fall asleep reading because you'd catch on fire in the Middle Ages. I remember reading that in some chronicle. There's
It's just
the
some of
dangers
the
of
beliefs
reading.
are so it just tickles my heart. Like
Yeah,
when somebody
like
really believes that kind of stuff. It's amazing.
yeah. I mean, I remember when I was growing up, there was that myth going around that if you read too much, you would go blind or you would go myopic, right? Like it would make you myopic, which actually might be true if you're not putting the book down and actually using your eyes to see distance as well. I don't know.
That's
I
what I'm
haven't
saying,
actually
it
looked
does
into that.
happen, right? Or if
Yeah,
you're reading in
yeah,
low candlelight, I could see that being a big
yeah.
issue
Being
too.
a
Just
being a
damaging your
strain
eyes.
being a strain to your eyes. Yeah. Okay. So we were talking about mental health and snail goo. By the
Oh, I
way,
wanted
it
yeah.
turns out
Oh,
snail goo is actually very effective for a lot of things. So maybe they weren't
really?
entirely. I mean, it's one of the primary actives in Korean anti-aging creams.
Oh
So,
my.
and it's
Have you
yeah.
been
So
there?
have I what?
Have you been there?
Oh, I live in. I'm in Korea now.
Oh, you're still there? Oh,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
You told me you were traveling. I didn't realize you live in Korea.
Well, no, live is a strong word. We're here as tourists at the moment, but because of
Oh,
the U.S. military of the last 12 years, we've spent about 9 of them here. So, yeah.
that's incredible. Wow. I love learning new things, and that is also a very cool fact. Why did you pick there?
Well, I mean, it was either that or somewhere in the U.S. at first, and anywhere but the U.S. is better for us because I just don't like living in the U.S. I don't like having to have a car. I don't like suburban sprawl. I don't like all. Anyway, yeah. So
Well,
they weren't going to send
yeah,
us back. They weren't going to send Ryan back to Germany, but no one apparently at the time wanted to go to Korea, so they let us go to Korea, and we fell in love with it. It's a great place.
amazing, amazing. I would love to hear more, but I don't want to grill you on your personal life.
No, no.
So I guess we kind of have maybe like one of the final things we talk about is kind of like a time travel thought experiment, which
Right.
would be like we travel back in time. I guess how would you take care of your mental health back then, knowing the struggles that you would seek or see?
Yeah, so I think this actually ties into what we were talking about, how what mental health, whether it was considered important or not, and it clearly was because when people suffered an imbalance, they had tons of treatments for it. So it's obvious that it was important, and it seems that the way it really does seem that when people were suffering from nerves or melancholy or madness, like the idea was get a physician to come and help you balance your humors. And by the way, unfortunately, if it was considered that you were too sanguine, they would definitely bleed you, which that's
Ooh,
unfortunate because blood is really essential for our functioning in our immune system. But I also found out last night, and I never thought about this, they had ways of purging the other humors as well, because bile comes from your digestive tract. And so if they thought you were suffering from an excess of bile, they could
cool.
prescribe a dietary change. Absolutely. But if that didn't work, then they would move on to the purgatives.
Laxatives.
Yeah, yeah, or something that would make you vomit because
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
so
I can see that.
so emetics were definitely were a thing. But from what I can tell, it's bleeding and purging was not the first step. As far as I can tell, it seems that the first step was to try to mend it with diet, and
Mhm.
with the usual, and always with the usual: sleep more, don't drink so much wine, um, get exercise, get fresh air, right? Like always try that with your diet, and then when that didn't work, then they might move on to the purgatives.
It's
So
nice to hear that they kind of have stages, they don't
yeah,
just I do I guess that was the rumor I believed in, that they just leached everybody for everything, but it
Yeah.
sounds like they try other things before that.
They do try it. It's only, that's like desperate levels. That's when things get
Mhm.
desperate, that they're like, well,
Okay.
clearly our attempts to balance these humors are failing. We must go to the next level.
Yeah.
And here's the good thing about the majority of the population: they couldn't necessarily afford phlebotomy. because
Mhm.
it wasn't just some quack who came and cut your veins open, right? This was actually a procedure. There was specialized equipment for it. Um, it was even acknowledged in the surgical manuals of the era. It was acknowledged that your equipment needed to be clean, and so
Really?
that surgeons should wash their hands. This is another of these bullshit myths, that medieval surgeons didn't wash their
Well,
hands.
for that one too. I thought it was
Yeah.
pretty dirty back then.
No, no, that starts in the modern era. That's the modern era, being the 16th century going forward, is when medical practice starts to get real grim. Um,
Mm,
because they
okay.
start,
What
yeah,
changed?
it's in part because like, for instance, in the early 19th century, these English physicians start deciding that quarantine isn't a thing we should do to keep disease from spreading. They view it. I read this one doctor whose opinion was that quarantining is a violation of personal liberty and is an old fashioned and ineffective technique for preventing the spread of disease. Meanwhile, tuberculosis is running rampant all over London,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Cholera and yeah. So there was this idea, this arrogance in the modern era, starting in the 16th, but really picking up momentum in the 17th century, that most things that had come before, most practices, most procedures, were benighted, old fashioned, and not to be pursued. So if the
Mm,
practice before was to wash your hands as a surgeon, well, we're not going to do that anymore. Also, I have a theory that because it was Arabic physicians who were the ones who were originally prescribing the washing of hands and equipment, and then Catholic physicians who were the ones who continued that tradition. I have this theory there might have been a Protestant bias against the
uh,
practice coming out of medical schools that were in Catholic places. I haven't, that's just a theory. I haven't been able to track down, I haven't
might have
tried to track
figured
down
something
any
out
evidence
there.
about that,
I can see
right?
why you would think that for
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, it's because otherwise it's like, why would you stop doing something that worked
Works.
for
Yeah.
1,000 years and just start doing something that clearly doesn't? See the death of Queen Caroline. If you all want to see a terrible, terrible royal death in the 18th century, see the death of Queen Caroline. Meanwhile, in the 15th century, Henry V takes an arrow to the face on the battlefield, and it penetrates his skull 6 inches. His physician designs a special tool to remove it, successfully does so, doesn't give the king an infection because he washes his hands and he washes his freaking equipment. And
Mhm.
Henry V heals and goes on to be one of England's most warrior kings of all time, right? Meanwhile, Queen Caroline, her physicians, oh my God, the things they did to her with their filthy, dirty hands, the infection she got, oh my God, horrifying.
Oh,
18th century versus 15th century. Both royalty, right?
just yeah, it's just wild. The reasoning behind these things, right? Oh,
Yeah,
we're not gonna do it because they figured that out first,
yeah,
maybe,
yeah, right.
allegedly.
Maybe that's those are the benighted Middle Ages. Like, we're not going to do anything that they did.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Kinda hipsters in their own sense, their own way.
right, right, right.
Yeah, but
Anyway,
again,
so yeah,
yeah,
mental health. I think it was very important. Clearly, that there were all
yeah,
these theories about it, that there were all these different kinds of treatments. And
much
Eric,
info.
Hippocrates is actually, I found out, one of the first. Now, there might be Sumerian physicians who also wrote about this. I don't know. The earliest physician I can find who talks about postpartum depression being deadly is Hippocrates, 5th century BC. He's already talking about postpartum depression and uses almost those words, right?
Wow.
The depression from which a woman suffers after giving birth. And he actually talks about cases where it resulted in the woman dying. So, and Hippocrates and Galen are foundational to medieval medicine. right? And so I know I remember reading in some actual medieval chronicle or source them also talking about the sadness from which a woman suffers after giving birth and the treatments for it, right?
That
So
is sad that they had hints, right? Like they had hints, they had ideas, it was
yeah,
there, but then nothing was acted on it,
right.
right?
And it seems like it may have been more acted on in the Middle Ages than it
Mm.
was in the modern era,
What was the
because
treatment for that? Or was it the same as
it
the
was
other ones
it
we
was the
just
same. It was the same, balancing the humors, change of scenery,
mm.
music. Music is actually prescribed in
Oh,
Tacuinem Sanitatis. He actually talks about it. It's a medieval manual of health translation from an Arabic medieval manual of health, beautifully illustrated. Some of the most gorgeous depictions of every aspect of medieval daily life can be found in this manual. It's copied massively all throughout medieval Europe. So you can find versions in French, in Italian, in German, right, with all these different great illustrations. And under the entry for sleep, it talks about the intense importance of sleep, how crucial
mm.
sleep is to your health and to your peace of mind. And one of the recommended treatments for insomnia is to have a musician play music, gentle music, while you sleep.
Just so a little flutist in the corner. I can just
Uh,
imagine it now.
Actually, it's a rebec player, so a stringed instrument, like a medieval fiddle, but not with the same kind of violent intensity of a modern fiddle, because it
That
had
sounds even better.
yeah they had sonorous gut strings, so it doesn't have the same metallic sharp edge that modern stringed instruments have, right? So
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
you've got this rebec player just sitting there, just gently playing some light little tune while the person in bed falls asleep. Right?
Oh,
So there's a clear understanding that sleep is crucial to good health, and and mental health is part of that equation. So I think it was very important. And so I think getting good sleep is very important. And maybe if I'm suffering from insomnia, I need Master Albrecht, who may or may not be watching this, my household musician, to
oh, very
come
good.
to come and play while I sleep. He actually is the one who sent me that picture. And
You got a shout
stupidly,
out.
yeah, it's like, well, Albrecht, now you know what your job at Penzic is going to be. You're going to be playing for me to sleep every night.
Aw.
And getting good exercise. And women, a lot of health manuals prescribe women should get exercise as well. They should go and walk. They should go horseback riding if they can afford a horse, obviously. They should
Mhm.
dance, right? So it's,
Hobbies. You kind of
exercise
prescribing
is
hobbies. Yeah.
right. Exercise is also prescribed. And the thing about all those holidays, those holy days that I was mentioning, they're not supposed to be days of feasting and revelry, but that's what they become. They're supposed to be days on which the pious go and hear mass and pray to whatever saint, worship whatever saint is being celebrated on that day. But what happens is in the morning, everyone goes to mass. They do. But then in the afternoon and evening, they party. And so partying in the
Balance.
Middle Ages was not a drunken, it wasn't like that terrible show, The Decameron on Netflix. Partying involved live music, it involved singing, it involved dancing, it involved sharing food and eating good food, special food that you might not eat at other times of the year. And mostly in the good times of year, these celebrations were outside in the public square. So you're also outdoors, you're in the fresh air, it's this big communal thing. So I think one of the big differences, this is a big difference between the modern and the medieval world, isn't the technology, though that's big. It's the community.
Community. I was gonna say community. Yes, 100%. That's what we're lacking these
That's
days.
what we're lacking. It was people did not feel alone because I mean they may have felt alone if they had like an actual neurochemistry issue, but what I mean is they weren't alone. They could only feel alone if they were actually suffering from a serious mental disorder, because they were always with people, right? They weren't alone. The only people who were alone were these weirdos who literally had themselves like walled up inside of churches, anchorites, or hermits who went and lived alone in a cave, like specifically seeking the solace, the loneliness,
Mhm.
the isolation. But most people didn't do that, and they didn't want to. Why would you want that? That leads to depression and melancholy.
Exactly. I think that's the takeaway, right? Is what do we learn from all of this research? And I think that is one of the big takeaways is that community is so important. It's important to stay
Yes.
curious about mental health because there's always improvements. You know, maybe in 1,000 years, they're going to look back at this therapy that we're doing now and laugh, right? They're going to say,
Right.
wow, none of
Right.
that worked. We have the answers now. And I think the
Yeah.
brain is such an interesting part of us because it is just the most complex thing on the
Yeah.
planet.
It is,
It
it is, and
is
it's funny that humans actually, in the West anyway, in Europe, we figure out relatively early on that the brain is the seat of mental health. Like that's we've got some weird ideas about other organs of the body, but we figure out pretty early on that the brain is the seat of mental health and madness, right? Like if there is an issue, if you're suffering from folly, from madness, then it's got something to do with your brain. So I thought
Mhm.
that was pretty interesting because
That's a
there's some other weird ideas. Like some for a while they think the liver is the seat of love.
Mhm. I
It's
heard
like
that too.
okay,
Different parts of like your body have like the thoughts or the soul or the memories, right?
yeah, it's like okay, that's a choice. The liver, huh?
I can see it. The liver is great.
Sure, we'll go
Why
with
not?
it.
Hey, we think it's the heart now. I love why. It is kind of random if you think
Right,
about it.
right. Oh, so speaking of the heart, I read a really interesting, possibly apocryphal story about Aristotle and Alexander the Great, and specifically the teachings on melancholy. So
Mhm.
Aristotle was teaching, it was Alexander the Great's tutor. Some people don't know that. He was. Aristotle was Alexander the Great's tutor. And he was teaching Alexander and his Alexander's companion about the effects of bile on the heart. Because
Mm.
this is supposedly what causes melancholy is that bile literally disintegrates the heart, not metaphorically. Like an excess of bile, black bile specifically, disintegrates the heart, it shrinks it, and so therefore you feel sadness, right?
Mm.
So Alexander doubted this. It's like, really, Aristotle? I don't know. I'm kind of a scientific guy and I want to test that theory. So this is an apocryphal tale. This comes to us via Arabs writing in the 8th century. So
Mhm.
it may or may not be based on actual ancient writings or not, but it's an interesting story because it at least reflects medieval views. So
Mhm.
Alexander decides he's going to conduct an experiment on a living creature to see if this is true. And according to the original story, the Arab version, the Arab original, he picks an animal that is the closest to human, but it doesn't say what that animal is. But in the
Hmm.
Spanish translation from the 13th century, Alfonso el Sabio, Alfonso X, the king of Castile, who orders a translation of this text, he conjectures that it must be an elephant because Pliny the Elder says that elephants are the closest to humans. And actually, in terms of
Intelligent
right,
wise.
right, he
Yeah.
might not have been
Socially wise
wrong.
too.
He might
Mhm.
not have been wrong, right? So Alfonso the Tenth of Spain of Castile thinks that this must be the elephant. But no matter what the animal, Alexander performs a relatively well structured study where he has an experimental animal and a control animal. And the experiment animal he takes and locks up in a small dark space, but he provides it with plenty of food and water the kind of things it should be eating, right?
Mhm.
And so he gives it all of its other needs. He just isolates it and puts it in a dark space.
Mhm.
The other one is given, the usual things. And then at the end of the experiment, he hopefully dissects and not vivisects the animal. It's unclear what actually happened. Nice.
some maracas. But thank
Nice.
you again so much for
Nice.
some maracas. But thank
Nice.
you again so much for taking your time. And we're gonna do another one, guys.
We are
Around
absolutely.
mid-June. What was the date again specifically? Do you remember?
So it's not the 28th because you're in the DR.
That's
So
right, Dominican
it's
Republic.
the 2 weeks from now, wasn't it? 2 weeks from now, I
Yeah,
believe.
2 weeks.
Same,
I believe
same. Yeah,
so.
yeah. So 2 weeks from now, we will be coming back with more medieval mental health. So if you guys have, excuse me, any questions about medieval mental health, you can either save them for then, or feel free to pop them in the comments under these respective videos on the respective platforms
That's
when they
right.
post. Yeah.
Well, thank
So
you
yeah,
very much.
yeah, no, thank you. This has been so much fun. And I'm going to keep doing some more research to get some more good stuff for our next one. This has been fantastic.
Perfect. All right, guys. Multi goodbyes. Thank you for tuning in.
Bye, everyone. Stay creative. Jen, if you just hang on, we can chat after the live stream.